Welcome to Let's Talk Near Death, the podcast show where we talk about life, death, and experiences somewhere in between. My name is Kirsty Salisbury, the host of the show, and I welcome you to join me as I talk to everyday people with not so everyday experiences. You may also wish to join the conversation on the Let's Talk Near Death Facebook page or access additional VIP content as a premium subscriber via Patreon. For just a couple of dollars a month, you can get an early access to episodes, additional bonus content, and your chance to connect with my guests. To do so, simply visit patreon.com/Kirsty Salisbury. Let's talk near death.
I remember feeling a little bit anxious because the speed at which I was travelling was so quick. So I was travelling through this tunnel, and I remember seeing, the full scene at the end of the tunnel, a bright light, and in the light there was a silhouette of a being. A few minutes later, she regained consciousness and said to him, there is a heaven. I've been there before and it's beautiful. And then she passed away.
Today I'm joined by Natasha Tassell-Matamua, who has been researching near-death experiences for about 12 years, a pathway that was triggered following an experience at her mother's deathbed and then her own near-death experience at around age 18. Today, Natasha is a senior lecturer at Massey University here in New Zealand, and her research encompasses two primary threads: Indigenous psychology and exceptional human experiences. Dr. Natasha Tassell-Matamua, welcome to Let's Talk Near Death.
Hi, thank you.
It is wonderful to have you here, another fellow Kiwi. I love that. I love that the Kiwi messages are getting out into the world. So we'd love to know more about your experience. Can you tell us something about your journey? How did this all begin?
Yeah, sure. It's hard to know where to start, actually, to be honest, Kirsty, but I guess I'll start at the part that a lot of people are intrigued about, which is my own near-death experience, as you mentioned, around the age of 18. So I'll just tell you a little bit about what happened, because I guess that triggered everything else subsequently. But around 18, I was living with a boyfriend. I'd just sort of moved out of home and had started university. And I remember one day being at home by myself and just feeling really unwell. And it had come on quite suddenly, and just feeling so unwell that I thought, okay, I need to go and lie down, which was then and still is quite unusual for me. I'm a bit of a keep going, keep working through it if I'm not feeling well. But on this day, I just felt that I really needed to lie down. So I did. I went and lay down on the bed, and I can't really tell you what happened other than I recall, as in I don't remember what happened physically. I just recall my consciousness feeling as though it had left my body, and I was travelling through a tunnel at really, really high speeds. And it's quite difficult to explain that sensation of travelling so incredibly fast, but having the realisation that it's not the physical body travelling. So, and the speed I was travelling at was nothing I'd ever encountered before, nothing like a roller coaster, nothing like going really fast in a car. It was a different level of speed. So I was travelling through this tunnel, and I remember seeing the full scene at the end of the tunnel, a bright light, and in the light there was a silhouette of a being. And I remember feeling a little bit anxious because the speed at which I was travelling was so quick. And I communicated to this being as I was travelling toward it that I don't know why, but I just remember saying I'm not ready yet. And at that point, and the communication wasn't verbal. It was more, I can only describe it as telepathic. And at that point, when I said I'm not quite ready yet, I was just propelled back through the tunnel at very high speeds, and back into my body. I just sort of woke up, and I was in a state of high fever, covered in sweat, and but sort of not concerned about my physical well-being. I was more sort of asking myself, what on earth just happened there? And of course, at the age of 18, I was really concerned about telling people about this experience. I had no frame of reference in which to place it, because I'd never heard of a near-death experience before. I'd never really heard of any unusual sort of experiences like that. So I didn't really know what it was. I did think at the time, was that, and it sounds funny now to me, but I do remember thinking, was that an alien abduction? Because I didn't know, what it was. I just knew that something profound had just happened to me. So I chose not to tell anyone about it, because I was a little bit concerned that and of course I'd started university, so I was still sort of finding my feet. I was very young. I was still sort of trying to establish my identity, I guess, as a person. So now in hindsight, I can think back and understand why I didn't choose to tell anyone. But certainly the feeling that people might think I'm a bit crazy if I did was there at the time. So I held that with me for a long time, that experience. I didn't tell anyone about it, but it stayed with me, and it was so vivid, and still is very vivid to this day. We're looking at coming up 24 years later. I think of it and I'm instantly there. I did eventually, about 10 years after the experience, I was about 28, for some reason I was speaking to my dad about some other matters, and I just, during the course of the conversation, I just mentioned that, oh, hey Dad, when I was 18, I had this really unusual experience. And the good thing for me was that my dad, he was affirming of it. He didn't say, oh, that's crazy, or, he just said, wow, that's interesting. And he himself said, oh, it sounds like maybe a near-death experience. And in those subsequent 10 years between my experience and talking to my dad, I'd actually read some books. So sorry, I'm jumping all over the place, but it all ties into what led me to my research. But immediately after, and I say immediately after my near-death experience, I felt changed, but I couldn't really articulate, what was going on or why I'd changed, or but I felt moved to find out more to find out knowledge, however that was, whatever that was. I just felt this feeling that I need to learn more. This is why I'm here, almost, because I need to learn more. And I felt really drawn to Buddhism, to learn more about Buddhism, which, again, I think back now was really interesting, because I'd never encountered, I didn't grow up in a family that was religious, or that even sort of entertained the idea of religions that aren't sort of dominant in New Zealand. So now I look back and think, oh, that's really interesting that I felt compelled to learn about Buddhism. And I mean by compelled, I felt the urge, to go out and buy books and just constantly read. And it was in the course of reading, one of the first books that I picked up on Buddhism was a book called The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. And it was in that book that I read about near-death experiences. And I remember thinking, hey, that's sort of like what I had. So that was affirming to me, like, okay, so maybe what I had does actually happen to other people as well. Maybe it's not an alien abduction experience. Maybe there's something more to it. So I spent years reading about Buddhism, and still do. All this time later, I feel that's a philosophy that really resonates with me. Some other changes that occurred was I no longer felt the course of study that I was doing at university meant anything.
What is it that you were studying?
At the time, I was studying zoology with the idea of becoming a marine biologist. And I should say it's not that I felt that marine biology and zoology wasn't important. I mean, I did and I still do, but I think it was more the method of study, so the scientific method that is used didn't really resonate with me anymore. So I left university and decided very quickly that I needed to travel. I just felt really hard to describe, but I just felt this thirst to learn more about anything and everything, and travel seemed like the most I guess promising way that I could do that. So I left, it might have been, within 6 months, I decided at the tender age of 19, and now that I have my own children, I look back and think, oh my goodness, I really hope that they don't decide at the age of 19 to go anywhere.
Quite young now, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, I sort of think, oh gosh, this brain explosion that I had, and I couldn't understand at the time why my dad was so upset about me going. Overseas, but now as a parent I can relate. But I thought at the tender age of 19 that I would go overseas, and so I did. I just went by myself. And again, as a parent, Kirsty, you can probably think, oh my goodness, I can understand why your dad would have been so concerned.
Absolutely.
But I went and spent a year and a half primarily in the UK. Again, continuing to learn about Buddhism, engaging in all sorts of, I guess, work environments that I wouldn't have considered. So I worked in a food factory, I worked in a jewellery shop. I did all these things which at the time just seemed like it was the sort of natural progression to go into all of these different areas. And I guess while I was in the UK, I came to the realisation after working in all of these places that, you know what, I want to go back to university and study, but not zoology. I wanted to study psychology because I thought maybe this will give me the answers I'm looking for. So I came back after a year and a half and went to university, studied psychology. And then everything sort of flowed from there over the I guess subsequent 10 years. I did a master's, I did a PhD, and that eventually, and in between I went back overseas. Still that thirst to learn was there, learn through travel. So I went back overseas and spent time sort of backwards and forwards while studying overseas, and eventually landed a position. I was in the overseas again in the UK, living over there, and had been there for 2 years with no plans to come back to New Zealand. But a colleague, he's now a colleague at Massey, called me and said, look, there's a job here and I think you should apply for it. And I said, oh, no, thank you. Don't want to come back. Very happy here, my own little bubble, doing my own thing. And then he called again a few months later and said, look, the position wasn't filled in the first advertisement. I think you should apply. And it was interesting that in those few months my personal circumstances had changed and I felt maybe it was time to come home. So I applied, I got the job and ended up at Massey. And then not long after that was when I started doing the near-death research. So a long-winded story, but that's the start of the journey, I guess, was the probably started well before that, but my own experience was probably the catalyst, I think.
Yeah. No, that's very interesting. I love that you're in a position where you can be employed to research such experiences. I just think that's amazing. And I know that you have researched hundreds of near-death experiences. So can we go back to your own personal near-death experience?
Yes.
You're out of your body, you're flying, well, flying might not be the right word, traveling at the most incredible speed. You said it's not like anything that you've had on Earth, not in a car or a roller coaster or anything like that. You're going up the white light, you're going through the tunnel, the white light, and you see the being at the end. Any idea who that was? Have you experienced that being before?
No. I am even trying to explain who that being might be is really almost beyond the realms of language to me. Yeah. But I felt like I had an understanding of who that being was during the experience, if that makes sense. And yeah, it's so hard to articulate, Kirsty, but I guess if I could put it in words, I would maybe say that it felt like the being was certainly someone I knew, someone I'd encountered before, but not a someone. Right, not a someone, maybe an energy or a force or some sort of divine power that I knew intimately. Yeah, it's so hard to explain.
Absolutely, and often these experiences you can't explain because they don't fit into words. They're very hard to articulate, so that's okay. What I'd love to know is you got there and you're saying, I'm not ready yet, telepathically communicating that. What was there anything going through your mind? Were you aware of your body back in the bed in the state of fever and illness?
No, I didn't. It's sort of strange. I and again, this is me thinking back retrospectively, but I don't remember thinking about my body at all, because I just felt that I was still me in the absence of the body. So but I wasn't concerned about it, and I can't really say. I remember thinking at the time, as I was going through the tunnel, that perhaps I was dying, and feeling like I had a choice over that, and then communicating, look, I'm not ready yet, and then just that understanding that okay, go back then and do what it is that you are meant to do. So I felt in the moment, and now, over years I've been able to process it. I felt that I was perhaps on a precipice. I was at a point perhaps that had been prearranged. And by prearranged, I mean prior to. And as I guess as a psychologist, this might come across as a bit wacky, but I feel this to be true to me, that I perhaps felt that experience had been prearranged, and that I would have a choice at that moment, and I chose to not continue on down the tunnel. That's my sense of what happened. But no awareness of the physical body and no care for it either.
That's going to be a great thing, isn't it? So, okay, I want to touch on what you just talked about, actually. So you're talking about this prearranged thing. Do you think we pre-plan our life before we come and live it?
My inclination from my own experience and from what I've heard through my research with other, through talking with people who have had a near-death experience, I think, yes, likely yes, that this is the lifetime that we're in is possibly but one lifetime in many, and therefore we have the capacity to make a choice about why we come back, why we're here. So I think there's some pre-planning, but maybe pre-planning of big things that we might learn, but the detail of how we learn them might not be set in stone, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
So we constantly, as we navigate our key learnings, we have this choice. So some people might say free will, I guess. But we have a choice for how we navigate that. And I think in terms of consciousness, and I don't want to speak to it too much because I'm not an expert in the area by any means, but quantum physics, and sort of the notion that the observer, reality is created by observation, or I'm not sure I'm articulating that well, but it sort of implies that there has to be some sort of intent or some active participation in the creation of reality. So I guess that's what I mean. I know that's an awful way of saying it, but I guess that's what I mean in terms of having that choice in a moment. That,
it's interesting, isn't it?
Some sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And again, it's something that's very, very difficult to put into words and to create a tangible box that we can put it into. So absolutely. It's a question I get all the time. I'll meet people and they say, well, what about predestination? What about free will? How much choice do we have? Do we pre-plan near-death experiences? And the other question, or the other side of that question, is when people come back after having a near-death experience or even a very close call where perhaps they didn't have the near-death experience or the out-of-body experience, but there was a very close run-in with death, perhaps a near miss on an accident or a very strong diagnosis where they nearly died but then pulled through and are okay. The question is often, how different are we after that experience? Are those experiences to trigger something brand new? How much do we come back and pick up the same routines or the same beliefs or the same things in our lives? How changed are we? So I know that you said you came back and you're suddenly very interested in Buddhism, very interested in finding out more about life and the meaning of life and things like that. How different were you in general? Did you still have the same interests in things? Did you have different mindset or things that were going on in your life?
I would say, and this is again on reflection, I would say that things changed substantially for me immediately. And I mean, some of the mindset, the perspective on life changed. And I mean, this is, I'm talking about an 18-year-old female who was still trying to establish a perspective. But I think I became a lot more certain of some things, or a lot more certain of the idea that there's a purpose and a meaning to life. I just don't know what it is. A purpose and meaning to my life. I just don't know what it is. So I did feel, I felt changed, but I couldn't articulate that change, and I couldn't articulate why I wanted to change or why I did change things.
Now, I know you're probably really enjoying this episode, but I wanted to pop in and let you know how you can further support the Let's Talk Near Death podcast. Every little bit of input helps me, it encourages me, and it enables me to be able to bring in more guests, share more episodes, and release more content. If you're financially able, you can pop over and become a VIP subscriber for just a couple of dollars a month. If not, you may want to consider leaving a review on iTunes, sharing an episode with a friend, or connecting over with the Let's Talk Near Death Facebook page.
Every little bit of input helps me. Thank you for listening, thank you for your support, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this episode.
And it's only looking back now that I can see, oh gosh. So some of the other things I did, obviously the Buddhism thing was incredibly strong. I mean, it was such a magnetic pull towards it that I can't explain rationally, because there was no previous, prior to that NDE, there was no previous interest at all in anything religious, to be honest. But I also, it is interesting. I mean, there was just absolutely nothing, and my childhood wasn't infused with any sort of religious background either. So there was definitely that. Another thing that I changed immediately was an appetite for meat. So I became vegetarian pretty much overnight, which astounded some people. And I think looking back 24 years ago, maybe in New Zealand, the socio-cultural context didn't really support vegetarianism or veganism in any way, shape or form. So that was probably quite a marginalising thing, for me. But I just couldn't shift from it. I couldn't change, and I just couldn't see myself eating meat again. And I tried to rationalise it in all sorts of ways, like, maybe it was zoology. I mean, we'd have to do things like kill spiders and crack open eggs with where the embryo, so we could see the heartbeat and watch it die and stuff like that. So I know it's they don't do that now, apparently, but
good.
I sort of related it to that, like, oh no, it was those experiences. But now on reflection, I think maybe there was something more going on. It was more about this inner philosophy of doing no harm was coming to the fore, and the relevance and the interconnected nature of us with everything in the universe.
Because that's quite a big after effect, isn't it? Where people feel that sense of connection, the oneness. They come back and things are definitely, they've got a different perspective, different view on how we are all connected.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you experience any, I want to come back to the term after effects, so things after we've come back which were different, that being one of them. Were there any other things that you experienced as after effects?
I found so the worldview change, definitely huge, and that encompasses all of those: Buddhism, vegetarianism, need to travel, etc. Need to not feel confined to relationships or places. It just didn't make sense to me anymore. Another thing I did notice physiologically, which I've heard and read a little bit of literature, although there's not a lot out there, but I wasn't able to wear watches anymore. They were just not sort of work for me anymore. So I haven't. I haven't for years, since that time, even bothered to buy a watch, because for whatever reason, every time I wore one, it would just not work. So that was a physiological effect that I noted. In hindsight as well, I couldn't put my I couldn't understand it for a long time until more recently. All I knew was, oh God, I'm obviously very terrible with watches, or I don't purchase that well.
I'm getting the cheap batteries.
Yeah. Why does this always happen to me? But now I can look back and place it in the context of what other experiences have said, and sort of think, okay, right. So that might be why it could be related to the NDE. There were a multitude of immediate and then ongoing changes that occurred, Kirsty, or what I would now think of as after effects. I didn't necessarily understand them at the time, but now I can look back and think, oh yeah, quite a lot changed in quite a short amount of time.
Wonderful. I think it's interesting because, like you say, back then there wasn't a lot of research. We didn't have the internet. There wasn't a lot of places to go to find out the information or to hear the stories of other people. And so these things might happen. Your watch isn't working, but it's not until many years later that we might piece the pieces together to understand that that is actually connected to the experience itself.
Yes, yeah.
So I was really interested to hear that you didn't talk about it for quite some time. Then when you did, you mentioned it to your father, and your father was actually quite supportive of it and said you might have had a near-death experience.
Yes.
Are you happy to share the experience that happened with your mother on her deathbed?
Yeah, absolutely. So, which again I think has triggered something, or my experience, and then my research sort of triggered in a curiosity to understand what happened to her. But my mum passed away when I was about 6.5 years old, and she was diagnosed with cancer in December of one year, and then passed away in May of the following year. So it was quite a rapid sort of thing that occurred. And of course I was young and had no real understanding at the time of what was going on, although I do remember one day going to school, and it might have been closer to her death or before she passed away, going to school and giving her a hug, and it's a very vivid memory, giving her a hug and just having this sudden awareness that she was going to die. And so saying to her, I really love you, Mum, and then going off and being a 6-year-old. So there was that incredibly vivid experience that occurred. But then she, as I said, she passed away when I was 6.5, and we were around her when she passed away. She had, and this information I got from my dad, she had woken up and was in quite a severe state in the morning on the day she died. So my dad and a family friend took her to the doctors, and the doctor effectively said, it's just best you go home. There's nothing more we can do. So they came home, and I guess that was a good thing, according to Dad, because it enabled him and the family friend to call people to come around. So she was surrounded by people when she passed away, which to me is a lovely thought. But so my dad and my older sister and my younger brother were by her side when she passed away, which I'm really grateful for. But she laid down on the couch, and it became apparent, I guess, that she was close to passing away. And my dad recalls the details. So some of the information's come from him, and some of it is my memory of being there at the time. But he says that it became apparent that she was passing away. And as she was passing away, she was talking him through the experience, saying, I can see a very bright light, and I'm travelling through a tunnel-like thing, and I feel really peaceful. And then Dad said she appeared to pass away, and then a few minutes later, she regained consciousness and said to him, there is a heaven. I've been there before, and it's beautiful. And then she passed away. And he said at that moment he felt he needed to open the window to allow her soul to leave. So he did. And he said there was this huge gust, the curtains just sort of blew up, and then that was it. And I remember being there at the time and sort of watching her pass away, and remember watching my dad actually and seeing him being very emotional and feeling quite concerned about him. More than myself, but that was my mum's death experience. And years later, recently, actually, only in the past few years, my dad told me that because they knew that Mum would die, her progression of cancer was really rapid. They'd talked about it quite a lot before she died, and, you know, had to process the fact that she'd be leaving children, and he'd be a solo dad at the age of 30 with 3 kids, and all of that. But in the course of one of their conversations, they had discussed that when she dies, she would let him know that she was okay after she died. And of course, he said that he didn't know. They never discussed how she'd do it. She just promised him that she would let him know that she's okay and that she's in a good place. So he feels that her experience of passing away and then coming back to say that there's a heaven and I've been there was her way of letting him know that she passed on. She is in a good place and not to worry. So that was her death experience. And now that I am able to process that as an adult, I can see lots of parallels with near-death, experiences. It's the same or similar features that occur: the tunnel, the feelings of peace, the moving towards the light. Perhaps that influenced my own near-death experience. I'm not sure, but I do know at the age of 18 I wasn't aware necessarily of the details of Mum's death experience despite being there.
That must have been quite amazing to connect those dots and place it all together and understand exactly what had happened, because 6.5 is quite young, isn't it, to experience something like that. So that was where I was leading to with my question was, as your father accepted your near-death experience quite easily, do you think that's as a result of what he experienced with your mother?
I would think yes, without a doubt. And also, as a result of that experience, I guess as a 30-year-old man with 3 young children and a wife who's passed away, you probably begin to look at the world in a completely different way.
Definitely.
Yeah. And as a consequence, I mean, he did, and particularly after we grew up, us children, and left home, he became what I would consider, and maybe he'd describe it as well, quite spiritual. But he became very interested in himself and pursuing, matters of meaning and spirit. So I think Mum's experience and then his subsequent investigations, I guess, put him in a position where he felt that maybe the best approach was to affirm my experience. I don't know. I've never spoken to him about why he was so good about it, but that's my inclination is to think that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And so you talked about how you came back. You didn't necessarily know what you were supposed to do. It wasn't a defined thing, I need to do this with my life. But you came back with a sense of purpose.
Yes.
Is that correct? Yeah?
Yes.
So how do you think the work you're doing today, do you think that's connected to that purpose? And I just find it so fascinating that you're in a place of researching near-death experiences, of being a senior lecturer at a university talking about spiritual experiences, and that could so easily be connected to your purpose.
Yes, yeah, I feel now that I am living that purpose, and it's a privilege. It really is a privileged position, as you say, Kirsty, to be at a university researching, near-death experiences, exceptional human experiences, and being allowed to do that. It hasn't come without its challenges, of course.
Oh, I'm sure.
I mean, I probably don't need to go into the many layers of, I guess, prejudice that have occurred in different ways. I'm not just sort of. I mean, there are lots of supportive people at the university, and then others who simply just don't understand why this is important. But for me, I feel that, that all of these things that have occurred in my life, my mum's death, my own NDE, my subsequent search for whatever, led me to the point of meeting. I should mention this as part of the story of meeting another colleague, Dr. Mary Murray, of meeting her one day and realising that her and I had this shared interest in near-death experience, and it was from there that we began our first research together. And I've subsequently gone on to do a whole heap of research in other ways. So, yes, I feel privileged. I feel very honoured whenever I have people who have had these experiences talk to me. You know, it really is a privilege, because I'd say at least half haven't disclosed their experience to anyone else.
That's the thing. I love that. And that really is a privilege and honour when people share for the very first time, and you're the person on the receiving end for that. But you've researched, you've talked to over 200 people in New Zealand about their near-death experience. Yes?
More. I'd say more, Kirsty, over time. Yeah, more.
It's amazing.
1,000 plus now. Yeah.
1,000 plus. Because I, as a New Zealander in this field, researching, interviewing, and trying to find as many people as I can to communicate these messages, because I feel that's very much connected with my purpose after my near-death experience. Yeah. And so there are a lot of people who aren't actively sharing or being very public about this. So I'm just getting quite excited talking to you, actually thinking about all the potential people that are in my own homeland, my own country, who I can connect with.
Yes,
so are you happy to share some of your research? What are some of the themes that have come out of your research, or some of the things that you've seen in your research?
Oh, where to start?
I know, it's a big one, isn't it?
I guess one of the things is that the way people talk about near-death experiences, the way New Zealanders talk about near-death experiences, is very similar to what you might read in a book about near-death experience, or what's out there in the literature from other countries. It's very similar in terms of the features. I would say that the after effects are also very similar.
Is there one specific after effect that you see more than any of the others? Is there one that stands out?
The one that probably stands out to me is the loss of the fear of death. So that's probably, I wouldn't say entirely, but close to being 100% of the people that I've spoken to. A complete 100%. Loss of the fear of death. And a lot have said, look, it doesn't mean that I'm not worried about how I'm going to die. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to die in a horrific, car crash or be murdered, or, so there's still concern or anxiety about how, but the actual moment of death they're not fearful of. And in fact, many would say that, well, it's not actually death, it's just a transition point.
Yes.
Yeah. So I would say that's the most common thing that I've had the privilege of hearing from people. And then I guess the next thing would be an enhanced sense of spirituality, in whatever form that would take. Many say that. And then the final thing is a change of, well, not the final, but perhaps the third most common thing is that change of perspective and worldview, and feeling like life is purposeful and meaningful. We just have to find our purpose.
Oh, I love that. I definitely came back with a huge sense of purpose, but like you, was never quite sure what that meant, how that would play out. And I think we just need to put one foot in front of the other and work towards whatever's in front of us and be led and connected on that spiritual level.
Yes, yeah, I agree.
Oh, I have so enjoyed this. Thank you, Natasha. Is there one key thing you would like to share with the audience? Is there one key message or something which really stands out for you that you'd like to share?
I guess the thing, one, I mean, there are many things, but one key thing I guess is to rest assured that the experience is real. You know, it's real for you. It means something. It has a purpose in and of itself. And I think it's almost an obligation for those of us who are able to as researchers, but also those of us who have had experiences, may not be in the research area, but I think it's our obligation to enhance understandings of near-death experiences for those who have not had them. There's a lot of misinformation and misinterpretation of them, but I think our role is perhaps to share the message that they are real, they're important, and they could and do have lots of really important messages for humanity as a whole. I think that would be it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. So Dr. Natasha Tassell-Matamua, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for your insights. And I'm sure that we're going to stay in touch and share more of what we learn and the research that we do as we go along our paths.
Lovely. Thank you.
Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Let's Talk Near Death podcast show. If you've enjoyed it, please share it with your friends, tell people about it. I'd love to get these messages out there. Don't forget you can also pick up your VIP access pass for additional content at patreon.com/Kirsty Salisbury. You can connect with us via the Let's Talk Near Death Facebook page, and I look forward to catching you for another episode soon.